Hey everyone, this is Frank, and what we're doing right now is I'm recording a quick little video tutorial that introduces how to use GIS, and more specifically how to use GIS to finish the actual introductory landform grading assignment that we introduced just now. So the things I'm going to show you basically are going to be the techniques that you're going to be able to use to basically create the existing base aerial, the existing base contour map, and also the simple slope analysis map. If you follow my steps, basically you should be able to knock out this portion in about an hour, depending on your skill level and your experience with GIS. So this is not meant to be a comprehensive GIS tutorial. It's pretty much just meant to be kind of like an introduction to the tool and how you can use the tool to do some very simple slope analysis maps for your work. So the first thing that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to go to the box folder. So in landform and hydrology, right here I put a Auburn GIS data folder in there. And so just take this entire folder and make sure it's downloaded and saved onto your local machine somewhere. There are some files that are pretty big, specifically the DEM file, and also a high-res aerial. The DEM is, you can see right here, it's about 300 something megabytes, and then there's a high-res aerial that's about 3 gigabytes. And if you wanted to, say for instance, speed up your workflow, you can skip the high-res aerial temporarily and download everything else. So you need to have ArcGIS Pro installed on your laptops or computers in order to run this tool. If you don't have ArcGIS Pro, you can actually also use the virtual lab that Auburn provides for all the students. And so that's, both the tool is accessible both through that lab and also just by installing it. Hopefully by now you all should have gotten an invite in terms of an ArcGIS Pro named user account, and that will allow you to log into Auburn University's system and then also open the map here. If this isn't working for you, just let me know and I'll try to troubleshoot this issue with you guys, let's say in the next class. But when you open ArcGIS Pro, the first thing you want to make sure that you have enabled is the extensions. So you go to this settings button down here, and then you go to the licensing button right here. And then in licensing, as long as advanced here says yes, that means that you have access to the program. So make sure that says yes. And then more importantly, make sure that these extensions here, 3D Analyst, etc., are all licensed as well. They have the word yes next to it. And if that is not the case, then you won't be able to do some of the analysis tools like the slope analysis that I want you guys to learn how to do. So again, these are just some things that we'll just need to troubleshoot and make sure that you have access to before you can even do the assignment. And again, we'll work through those PC issues if you aren't getting access to these tools. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to create a new map. So basically go to this new template thing here and then just click on map. In the create a new project window that pops up, in the name, just call this Auburn _ University landform project. And then just leave everything else as is and click OK. So when you open ArcGIS Pro, this is kind of the interface that you may see when you open it. Basically, there is a map window in the center. There should be a table of contents panel to the left side, and then a catalog panel to the right side. If this is not the layout that you have, you can set it up to be that way by simply going to this View tab at the top. And basically up here, it gives you the actual tabs that you can use to set your window up in this way here. So for instance, like catalog pane, if I click on that, that brings you to the catalog pane, and contents, that brings you to the content as well. There's also the geoprocessing tab right here. That brings you to all the tools that you can use to do analysis. processes in GIS. The most important ones are going to be the catalog and the contents. So take some time and just familiarize yourself with the user interface a little bit, like, just pan around the map. Just make sure that you understand the controls. So like, for instance, a scroll wheel allows you to zoom in and out. The left click button allows you to pan, and the right click also is another zoom as well. So just get used to the tools. The first thing that you are going to want to do whenever you create a new map is you're going to want to add the data that you downloaded. So what you need to do is you need to connect to the folder that your data is saved to. So the way you do that is you in your catalog, you right click on this folders button here, and then you right click on that and then choose add folder connection. And then what you basically want to do is you're going to want to basically connect to wherever on your local machine you saved the data that you downloaded from Box. So in my instance, I have a folder on my local machine called GIS Data City Auburn AL. So I'm just going to copy that directory and then paste it in here, then hit OK. And then actually we should just do is just click on that and hit basically right click on this add folder connection, then paste it in there, then click OK. And then that should add that folder into your catalog on the right side there. And then basically it allows you to access any of the data that is saved within that folder there. The data that I'm giving you is a couple of shapefiles. So there's one called BLDG for building, pavement, sidewalk, wall retaining. So let's add all 4 of the shapefile layers that you have downloaded. You only see these 4. I didn't give you all the shapefiles. But the building footprint shapefile is basically all the buildings in the Auburn campus area, pavement, sidewalk, and retaining walls. You see when you add them in, it populates the contents table to the left side. And then you can zoom in, you can see basically what I've given you is a simple line work vector-based map of the Auburn University campus. And then the other file that I've given you is a raster file, and it should be called Auburn_DEM_005FS. So bring that file into your map. I'm going to turn off the other layers first to show you what this is. Basically, what I'm giving you is a high resolution digital elevation model file of the Auburn campus. This is a file that I made from LiDAR data that you can download from various resources out there, and that basically gives you a really high quality, high resolution elevation model of the Auburn campus, which you can use to cut contours from. So this is a very useful file. That's a file format that you will encounter many times in the course of your landscape architecture education, just because of the fact that you can get elevation contour data from that. So for the work that we're going to do for now, this is essentially what you can start with. The last thing that I might recommend doing before we do anything else, let me turn off this real quick, is to change the base layer. So go to Map, the tab at the top, Base Map, then just change that to Imagery. And then you see basically what happens is that it just loads in and Bing Maps aerial photo of the campus. So the first thing that we're going to do is I want you all to create a paper space. So what you do is you go to the Insert tab at the top, New Layout, and then you can see there's a bunch of different paper sizes that you can use. What we're going to do is we're going to do the tabloid 11 by 17. So choose ANSI Landscape Tabloid 11 by 17. And what that's going to do is then create this basically this paper space here. And then what you want to do is you want to insert a map frame. So what you do is you click on this in the insert tab up here, map frame, and then just choose the one that has the actual map there. There's a default extent, but this is one that, just use this one. It doesn't really matter which one matters, but what we want to do is we want to just drop the map in. And before I click and drag it, you can see that when I move my mouse around, that you can see it lines up with the rulers at the top and the right side of the page. So what I want you to do is make sure that when you draw this box, just as best as you can, try to make it so that there's a 1-inch margin. So I'm going to go to from 0 to 1, and from on this edge here 10 to 11. So I'm just going to try to line it up. You can kind of see that this is close enough. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just needs to be close enough. And then I'm going to click and drag it, then do the same exact thing on the other side, where you line it up to a 1-inch margin at the top, and to a 1-inch margin at the bottom, like so. And that's basically going to be the layout of the plan on the actual paper itself. Then what you can do is basically you can click on this this rectangle here, go to the layout button. So right at the top here, there's this layout tab. Then click on activate. And what that does now is it makes the actual map space itself live. It's now you can zoom in and out, spin around, zoom in and out. So what I want you to do is I want you to find an area on Auburn's campus for your project that we're going to use as our site essentially for this grading exercise. And I would like you all to pick an area at the scale of, say, 1 inch equals 20 feet or 1 inch equals 30 feet, just because we don't want the size to be too big and too unmanageable. So what you want to do first is, you can obviously find an area. Let's say you want to, do this little parking lot right here. And when I say parking lot, basically, you will see what I mean in a second, because there's a lot of interesting grading challenges in this area here. You can pick anywhere you want on campus. It doesn't really matter to me that much. It's all about just finding an interesting area that has an accessibility issue. So, roughly pick the area that you want to use, and then move down here to the bottom left of the map frame. You see there's this 1 to 677 thing there. Yours is going to be different depending on how much you zoomed in. But you're going to want to click on customize, and then make sure that the scale format, so I'm going to go to scale format, make sure that's set to 1 inch equals feet. So there's a bunch of different formats here, but this one right here should be good. So just check that right there, 1 inch equals something feet. Click OK. And now you can actually customize this scale here. So right now I'm just going to highlight this number here, and then change that to 30. Hit enter. And now you see basically the map has now appropriately scaled itself to be 1 inch equals 30 feet on this. And as long as I don't zoom in and out, it will maintain that scale. So I'm going to do this little parking lot thing here. And once you have the general area that you want to work with, what you want to do is create what's known as a bookmark. So this is my site. Then I go to the map tab at top, and then click on bookmarks, and then click on new bookmark. And I'll call this one parking lot site. Okay. Then once you're done with that, then you want to leave the activation. So basically go to this map frame tab up here. Activated map frame tab right here, and then click close activation. So now basically you're out of the activated map. So now if you move around, it's basically going in the paper space viewer. So now you have a bookmark. So if I go back to, so there's 2 tabs in the data frame here. There's a layout tab, and then there's a map tab. The map tab is basically more or less your model space viewer, and then the layout tab is kind of like your paper space viewer. So I'm going to go back to the map tab right here, and go to your map tab here at the top, and go to bookmark, then click on parking lot site, and that brings you to the parking lot space that we're looking at right now. for the site that I'm interested in. You'll see that at the bottom here it says 1 inch equals 40 something feet. This map space here, the scale of it isn't necessarily the same as the scale here. The scale really matters the most here when you know for a fact it's going to be a map scaled at 1 inch equals 30 feet on an 11 by 17 paper space. But I'm going to go back to the map tab first, just because I want to show first how to actually create the first map, which is the very simple aerial base. And so what we're going to do, you can see basically right here, this world imagery base is pretty low quality. It's not very nice looking. And that's why using that high res aerial, so if you've downloaded that 3 gigabyte file, if you bring that into your map, let's see, it's if you bring that into your map, you'll see that basically it's actually a much higher quality and also more up-to-date map of the Auburn campus. So that's what that file is meant to do, is basically give you a higher quality base. An alternative to bringing in the high-res aerial is you can actually just go straight to the source of that aerial. So I'm also going to save in the box folder this link here. This link here is to a map server that allows you to access the high-res aerial via a network connection in GIS. And how that works is basically like this. Is basically you copy this link, so Control C on my keyboard, and then in GIS you go to the Insert, Connections, add ArcGIS server right here, then paste that into the server URL and click OK. And then on the catalog on the side, you see there's servers right here. This should pop up on the side here. Just expand that. Give it a second. It'll take a minute to load, but it'll load. So just give it a second. And then when it finishes loading, it basically brings out a large list of data sources that you can bring into your map. So for the aerial photo, that is in this main folder right here, and you can see that there's all these aerials of Auburn University. Aerial 2020 is the one that I'm using, so you can just bring that in to the map. And I'll show you what that looks like. It looks like this. So this is the same high quality map. And so why would you use this one as opposed to the high res aerial file that I've given you? Well, the high res aerial file that I've given you, if I zoom out, covers just this little portion of Auburn's campus, and that's because I stitched together a little chunk of that aerial just for the purposes of this exercise. But let's say for instance or are interested in a site that goes beyond that area on Auburn's campus, then you would use this here to obviously get a space somewhere to the south or to the north, depending on what you want to do. So, but if your site is within the high-res aerial here, then you should just be able to use the file that I've given you. So what you want to do is once you have added to your map, just go back to your layout tab and see basically now you have the map plan aerial just laid out there using the same bookmark at 1 inch equals 30 feet scale. So it's all good. So what we can do now is we can prep this for exporting. What I want you to do first before you do anything obviously is to save the map. So just click on Save Project. And before you export this out, you can add a few elements that will help you help the graphics. You can add a north arrow and a scale bar. So add a north arrow. So basically click on north arrow here, and you'll see there's a bunch of different aerial types in ArcGIS. I recommend using this one right here. It says just ArcGIS North 10. It's a simple, fairly simple graphic, but I think it's the least complicated. So just put a little north arrow to the bottom left side of your map, and then choose scale bar right here. And then there's a bunch of different scale types you can see. Obviously you want to use imperial because we work in the United States. We want to use feet. And then basically you can pick any style that you like for your scale bar. So for me, I'm going to pick this one right here. this alternating scale bar 2, and then basically you just drag and click and drop that in. Now you notice that this scale bar here isn't very useful because the unit of miles is too coarse for the scale that we're working here. So what you want to do is you want to change the units of this. So click on the scale bar, right click on it, and hit Properties. And that brings up on the right side a Properties panel here. And this is where you can begin to change the units. So right here in Map Units, set that to be feet. You see now that's changed it to feet. And then everything else should be okay. You can also change, say for instance, the font and text on the side here. I believe that is in the appearance right here. So right now it's set font to Arial 12 point. You know, looking at this right here, that the 12 point font is kind of large. So you can change that to maybe something like 8 and then hit apply. You can see that it makes it a little bit smaller, maybe a bit smaller. Let's try 6, hit apply. So something a little bit more subtle like this is better. And then font, you can mess with the font if you want. So I'm just gonna go out, but that's basically how you set the scale bar. Now, the thing that you're gonna wanna do, you can see here basically that it's set to like these breaks here, but 30 is right here. You're gonna wanna like make the scale bar, the size of it and the length of it. You can see when I like change the actual size of the scale bar, it automatically adjusts the units and the breaks on it. You're going to want to make sure that this scale bar makes sense for our map. And since our map is 1 inch equals 30 feet, ideally you would make it so that at least 1/4 of the scale bar is set to that 30 foot increment. So if I just adjust it a little bit, eventually, yeah, right here, you see it says 0, 15, 30, 60, 90, 120. This, once we print it out on 11 by 17s, that right there should be 1 inch. And this should be 2 inches, and that should be 3 inches in that area. So this is a scale bar that makes sense for this map. So once that's good, just click Save again, and then we can export this out. So the way you export a map is you basically go to Share, Export Layout, and then there's a bunch of different file types that you can export. You can export PDF, PNG, JPEG. For the purposes of this assignment, you will probably use a few of them, but for this map here, just do PDF. Then in name, just want to make sure you save it to some location. I'm just going to save it on the desktop. For now, I'll call this one layout_aerial. And then resolution right here, just set that to be 300. We will change that later for some maps. And then everything else should basically look the way it looks like I have it here. Everything seems good. So then just hit export. And then when it's finished exporting, you can just go to wherever you saved it. In my case, I saved it on the desktop. And then right here, layout Arial. So if I double click on that and open it, you'll see that we've created the aerial base for this parking lot site. So that's kind of what I want as their first map, is basically to have this site aerial. I'm not going to be too hard on graphics and composition and that kind of stuff. I would encourage everyone to say, you know, fine-tune the image as much as you want. Say, for instance, if you want the north arrow to be a bit more of an architectural north arrow, you can change that. If you want to lighten up the image and adjust the colors so it's just a little bit more vibrant, you can do that. Not the biggest deal for this assignment, but what we want to have is just a very clean, simple, consistent look to everything. Trust your graphical instincts and say, you know, maybe the scale bar here is too dark, and you can change the colors for that and have fun with it. But at a bare minimum, this is what we want for the basic layouts of all our maps, is something like that looks like this. And we're gonna need to put a little title on these maps as well. So that's something that we can do, say, in InDesign later. Okay, so that's the first map. And then the second map, I have the assignment sheet here, is an existing conditions contour plan. So here's how we create that. Basically, what we want to do is we want to go to back to the map view in GIS. And now we're going to use the DEM and also the other layers on top of that. So what we want to do is we want to go to the, have the DEM open here, and then go to map. Make sure the bookmark is set to the actual site. Let me turn it on right here. To the site that we're working in, right here. So I clicked on bookmark, went to parking lot site. And what we're going to do now is we're going to use this DEM image here to cut contours out of this area of the site. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the geoprocessing tools bar right here. So go to analysis, click on tools, and that brings up this geoprocessing toolbar here. And then we're going to search for contour in there. So again, if you remember back in the first step when we first opened GIS, if you don't have the 3D Analyst extension enabled, this tool will not work. So make sure that the extension is enabled, and this is just making sure that you install the program correctly and you have permissions for the extensions enabled. I should have gotten everyone the extensions permissions through our GIS group and Steve Wall. If you're not seeing this, send me and Steve Wall an email and just let me know that you guys aren't having access, but you should have access to this as long as you're logged in to your Auburn University named user account. So click on contour. And then input raster right here. What you want to do is you want to bring in this DEM file right here. So the easiest way is just to, you can just drag it in, or you can just click on this drop down arrow and then click on Auburn DEM 5. And it's going to output the contour to your default geodatabase. I just leave this as is. I don't touch that. In contour interval, you want to set that to be 1 for 1 foot contour. And then Z factor right here, you want to set this to be 3.28084. And the reason you want to do that is because the DEM file that I've given you, the actual units of the file itself is in meters. And so if you don't put that Z factor in there, when you put 1 in the contour interval, it's actually going to cut 1 meter contours as opposed to 1 foot contours. So this is an extremely important step, is to make sure you add this conversion factor of 3.28084, because what that can do is basically just take all the units in here, multiply by that Z factor, and then it's going to convert them to a feet unit. This is a very unintuitive aspect of GIS, is that it makes unit conversion a little bit unintuitive, because you have to always remember the actual conversion factor whenever you're cutting contours. So it's a little bit strange. And then the next step is you want to go to this environments button right here, and you're going to set the processing extent here to be same as display. Before we do anything, again, go back to your bookmark right here. Make sure this is set as the site. I clicked on it 2 times. And then once you've set the bookmark, then go to processing extent, then hit current display extent, like so. And you see it's just going to put a bunch of numbers in here. But what's basically telling GIS to do is that it only should cut contours within the area that I see, literally. And then you can go hit run on the bottom right side. And what you see now is that you've got contours for that area. So if I zoom out, you see that it only cuts contours for the area that I was interested in. If I turn off the DEM and turn on the aerial, you can see this is what the contours look like on top of the site, this parking lot site here. And so now you see why I chose a parking lot site, is because the parking lot site here just has this really steep slope across it. And so, one idea, for this site potentially would be, say, for instance, considering access from this intersection here down to that building there by ripping out this entire parking lot and creating this grade transition down there. For this assignment, it doesn't really matter to me if you decide it's like take existing parking lots and turning them into usable landscape spaces. Again, this is not meant to be official plans for Auburn University. They're not going to actually build anything that we draw. This is meant to be an academic exercise where you find interesting areas where there are weird grading challenges and designing an actual concept within that. So you can choose literally any site you want with no political baggage associated with it. When you add the contours in, what you should do first is obviously make the symbology clear. So click on in the contour on the content side, click on the little symbol below the line there, and then just make the color to be black. Hit apply. And so then that turns all the contours to be black. And then you also want to label the contour. So click on the contour, right click on it, then choose label. And you see what it does is basically it has added these numbers here, but we want to verify that these are actually the contour elevations. It's highly likely that they aren't. What you want to do is you want to go to the attribute table of the contour file, contour object. So go to right click on it, go to attribute table. And you see actually the contour lines themselves are actually in the range of like the 600 values as opposed to like the 1, 2, 3, 4. And so what is actually being labeled here isn't the actual contour number. It's actually labeling the object ID. So you want to make sure that the contour lines are labeled to be the actual contour value itself. So the way we do that is just right click on it, go to labeling properties right here. And now you see basically the reason why the number is like this is because it's labeling the ID, basically object or rather ID, this value right here in the table. So I'm just gonna erase that in the expression there, then double click on contour, then click apply. And so now you see the numbers here have changed themselves to be the actual contour elevation itself. So that's basically correct. You can do a few things like in terms of adjusting the positioning of the contour. So in this labeling properties window on the side here, you can also go to symbol right here, appearance, has a font and the font size. So again, the font text might be a little bit too big. Let's change it like 6. Hit apply. Actually, what you should do is you should go to the layout view and see how it looks. So I'm going to turn off the high-res aerial and just kind of study and see how this looks. So right now, this is how the contour plan is looking. So 6 looks okay. You can go to position, and then you see how there's a bunch of different placement styles. So there's actually one called contour placement. So if I click on that, what it does is it tries to lay out the contours along slopes continuously, like so. I mean, you see, like in some areas it does it well. In other areas it doesn't do it well at all. Like some of these are missing labels and stuff like that. So you might want to play around with these options here, like placing labels on left. If I uncheck that, what does that give us? That gives us a bit more of a random spread. Maybe regular placement is the best one. If I click on regular placement, like that makes a little bit more sense to me in terms of placement of the contours. And right now you can see the labels are being positioned centered straight. You can do there's ways you can. I think there's let me see, centered straight. Let's try offset straight. Yeah, so that puts it on top of the line. So maybe that's a better way to do it. So that doesn't look too bad. So that as a contour plan works pretty well. So that's going to be what one layer of what we export out. Another thing that we're going to do as well is we're going to export the baseline work for this as well. So the building layer, the pavement layer, the sidewalk layer, and the retaining wall layer. So we want to have the contours plus a little bit of the base plan in there as well. And that way, you know, when you're grading your problems, you're gonna at least have the contours with some context behind it. So this is all good to me. I'll show you guys how to bring this into Illustrator and fine tune the line weights and the colors and all that stuff. It's fine if the export of this doesn't have the finalized colors. The main thing you want to set up in here is just make sure that the layers are correct that you're exporting, and also the labeling for the contour lines is correct. We'll change the colors and all that stuff in Illustrator in a second. But that's it. And so once you have that set up, then just simply go to export, so share. Well, first off, save the file, and then go to share, layout, and then in the file type right here, we're going to set that to be an SVG file. And the reason we choose SVG is because there isn't really a good Illustrator option. SVG is the closest that you can do because it maintains layers and hierarchy when you import that into Illustrator. So I'll show you that what it looks like in a second. So just click SVG. Then in name here, we're just going to save it to the desktop, and I'll call this one layout contours. And then in vector resolution, you're going to want to set this to be a high resolution, so 900 is good. And then everything else should be fine as is. The most important thing is whenever you're exporting out vector lines, you don't have any raster images turned on as well at the same time as well. So you see I have all these images turned off. So then once that looks good, just hit export. So export completed. What we're going to do now is we're going to open Adobe Illustrator. So I'm going to go in here, open Illustrator. When Illustrator opens, you just simply go to open, find the file that we exported. So the file I exported was called layout_contours. So you click on that file, click open. If something comes up, just click OK. And then you'll see basically you've exported out a vectorized base in Illustrator. And at this point, you know, if you know how to use Adobe Illustrator, then I don't need to teach you, but basically you want to go through here, you want to like fine tune the graphics of this to make a very simple, clean base map. So I'll show you my process that I do, and then you can try to follow it. But basically the first thing you're going to do is, if I expand the layer in here, you'll see that it maintains the hierarchy of the layers for all the different elements, and so you can use this to help your process. What I like to do is everything is in a bunch of these what's known as clip groups, and so you're going to need to want to clean it up. The clipping groups makes the editing of some of the lines pretty tricky. So without getting into too much detail on how to do that, an easy way to do that is to, let's say for instance, you want to adjust the line weights and colors of all the contour lines. Which I recommend doing is if you use the selection tool here, let's say if you click on that, you see when you click on it, it actually selects all of the objects because everything's grouped in clipping in clipping groups. So what you want to use this thing called direct selection instead, the white arrow, then click on one of the contours, right? So it clicks on one, it brings up all the vertices for it. And then you go to select, same, and then there's a bunch of different options you can choose. Appearance is probably the simplest one. And see what you've done now is you've now selected all the contour lines. Basically, you select an object and you want to select everything that looks just like that object. But it also, at the same time, ignores all the clipping planes. You see what happens is like the contours actually extend beyond the clipping plane. Basically, once you've done that, then you can, as long as it's selected, you can now go back here and stroke and change it to a different stroke. So let's say, for instance, 5 points, and maybe make the stroke a little bit lighter gray. And then the other thing you can do is you can add a dash appearance to that, because as you know, existing contours should be dashed. So you can check this dashed option in here, and then choose 5 for your dash. And then once that's done, you've created a simple contour map with dashed lines. If this dash is too coarse for you, like for me, I think it could be a little bit finer. You just have to do the same process again, where basically you select one of the contours, then choose select, same appearance, and then you can adjust them all again. So maybe let's make it a 3-point dash with a 2-point gap, and see how that looks. So that's a little bit nice. You see, the gaps aren't so big. The dashes are a little bit smaller. The next thing you want to do is you're going to want to make sure that every 5th contour is darker. And so if you know how to use GIS really well, you could probably automate this. Again, I don't want to like over teach you guys, so just go through these contours here and just pick every 5th contour. So here's 665, 660, 670, 675, 680, 685 right there, and then 690 right here. So my map here was fairly simple, wasn't that complicated, but your mileage may vary. And then basically, once you have all those contours selected, you're going to want to where we go? Yeah, so you can go to the stroke thing here and just change the weight to, let's say, for instance, 1 point, like so. And I can see that those contours are a little bit darker. And what should be the case now is, now that you've changed them, if you click on one of the 5th contours again, go to select, same appearance, it's only going to select the ones that have the exact same appearance, basically the ones with that line weight. So you can make that even thicker if you think it's visually better. So let's try 1.5. I think that is much clearer. You can see, like the visual of this reads really well. And that's basically, if you ask me, the way I would recommend going about editing this. So, all the other base layers, let's say, for instance, these parking islands right here. So click on one of these parking islands, go select same appearance. I recommend for all the background, just do simple grayscale colors with 0.5 line weights. So that's one object. Let's choose the walks here. So click on the walk. Yeah, this one. Select same appearance. Change that to be like 0.5 with a gray color. Is there anything else that we missed? Looks like I got most of the stuff on the plan. It just needs to look right, and that's kind of like this as a base plan that we can use for the grading exercise is a good start. Maybe, like this bounding box on the exterior, maybe we want to take that, select same appearance. Maybe that, we make much thinner, give it maybe almost a white light color, like so. That way it's not so heavy. Like this is just a cleaner appearance. And that's it. And so, think about, what we've just done. We've taken that GIS base here. We cut contours from this file here. We export out of the base, and in not too long of a time, you actually created this very simple existing conditions contour plan of your site that you can begin to use for your grading exercise. So once you're happy with the general look of it, you want to go to File, Save As, and save it as an Illustrator file. So just choose the option Adobe Illustrator. You can leave the name the same. Hit Save. Okay. And now you've created an Illustrator file that has the base map for this work. There's one additional element that I'm adding in the assignment here, you're seeing the existing conditions base plan that it includes a DEM background with a hillshade. So basically what I mean by that is in GIS, export out an image of this. Let me turn off these layers here. An image of this in order to add a little bit of depth to the actual image itself. So let me show you how to do that. First, what you want to do, again, everything starts with a bookmark. So go back to your bookmark, click on, in my case, parking lot site. So I click on the bookmark. And what you want to do is you want to export a little portion of this based on that bookmark. So I had the bookmark selected. I'm going to right click on the DEM file here, go to data, export raster. Save the raster to some location. So click on this browse button here. Save it to, say for instance, your landform project folder, and call this one site DEM. And you want to like label it .tiff. You actually need to add the extension file in the actual export itself. So hit save, and then clipping geometry, set that to be current display extent, and then hit export. So what we've done is essentially we've exported out a little square chunk that represents the DEM of our site. If I go back to layout, you see that it's just that area. What we want to do now is we want to visualize this in such a way where the gradient makes a little bit more sense. Right now the gradient is a bit too smooth, so it's a little bit hard to, I mean, you can see, you know, basically high to low, or rather high as lighter and low as darker. So what we can do now is if you right click on this TIFF here, you can go to symbology. In the symbology tab here, you can click on this thing called classify. And what this does is it actually represents the terrain in like these series of ranges, so that, you know, every elevation value between this range and this range just has a simple color associated with it. So what you should choose in the method here is this thing called defined interval, like so. And then what you want to do is in the interval size right here, you want to set that to be a number. So again, the units here are in meters. So if I let's just put a random number in here. Let's put 3. Hit enter. What it's doing right now is it's creating intervals of 3 meters between the ranges here. But if you want to say, for instance, make the ranges something that matches the actual contours here, right? Let's say you want to create 5-foot or 10-foot ranges. You're going to need to use the actual, let's say, range in meters, but using the value in meters in feet. The way of saying is basically like this, is that basically every meter is equal to 0.3048 feet. So if I put in here 0.3048, hit enter. Enter. And I zoom into this this plan here. It's hard to see. Let me change the color range a little bit. Let's change it to one of these other rainbow gradients, like so. You see how, because I put 0.3048 in here, the contour lines now match almost perfectly with the color ranges. That's because 0.3048, that's basically what 1 meter equals to, or sorry, what 1 foot equals to in meters. So this number here is your key to basically visualizing the contours to match the actual breaks themselves. So you can do that. You can do 0.3048, or you can say, for instance, do this is to multiply this number by 10. So 3.048, and enter. And now you see this is separating the breaks by 10-foot increments. And then likewise, what you can do is you can in order to do 5 feet increments, you just need to divide this by 2, right? So that is 1.524. Enter. And now you see that basically it's now represented this in ranges of 5 feet increments. So this, if you ask me, this isn't bad. I actually, thinking back to this, I actually think the 1 foot ones look the best. So again, just play around with this and see what looks best. I would say either 1 foot increments or 5 foot increments, work the best. But this works pretty well. And then choose a very simple color scheme. Don't choose this rainbow gradient. That's not very attractive. Choose something like a simple grayscale one, or a very simple color one that isn't too aggressive in its color gradient. This isn't bad. Let me just pick. All right, this one I found right here isn't that bad. So once you have the look that you want, turn off the contour lines so that you just have the gradient here. And then right before you're ready to export, one thing I will note is that you can see basically right here, the raster still has the pixelation to it. To fix that, what you do is you go to the appearance in the raster. Make sure you have the raster selected, and go to the appearance at the top and go to this resampling type button here, then choose cubic. And what that does, it just like interpolates between the pixels and creates a smoother look to this. And now if you turn the contour lines, you see that it lines up really nicely with the contours. So we're going to export that out as a layer. So this is a layer. So go back to your layout tab. You see that it should line up with everything. And then take this and then export that out. So I'm going to click on export layout. And then anything that you export as a raster, I recommend just exporting out as a simple like PNG or a JPEG. PNG is probably my recommended option. And then choose transparent background. And then in resolution, set that to something like 200 or 300 DPI. 300, always go for a higher resolution. And then save it to some location. So I'll go to save it on my desktop, and I'll just call this one site DEM. And then choose export. And then that should be good. And then when it's finished exporting, we're going to export another layer out, and that's going to be the Hillshade. So to create a Hillshade, that's a geoprocessing tool that we want to export. So go back to your geoprocessing window right here. Again, if you don't know, can't remember where it is, you just go to View on the top, geoprocessing, and we're going to type in Hillshade. So there's a Hillshade in 3D Analyst. So just click on Hillshade. In input raster, bring in that site DEM raster. Just leave everything else as is and just hit run. And you see you've created what looks like basically a rendered terrain of that topography. So this is something that we're going to overlay on top of the DEM to create a very nice, cool three-dimensional effect to the image. Again, when you export this image, it always has this pixelated look to it. So to fix that, just go to Appearance, Resampling, Cubic, and that smooths it out. So now we take this map here, go to your layout, and export that out. So again, same exact process, just choose layout. All the stuff is the same, and then in here, go to wherever you're saving the file, and then call it site Hillshade, and then hit export. And then the last thing we're going to create is that slope analysis. So again, go back to your geoprocessing window, then type in slope. And so choose slope in the 3D Analyst tools. In input raster, bring in the site DEM raster again. Leave that as is. And then in output measurement here, set that to be %, because then what we can do is we can set the breaks to be, let's say 1%, 2%, 3%, 5%, whatever. And then that's it. And then just hit run. And then that is a slope map. So here's how you represent the slope map. And again, number one, first thing we do is we make sure that's selected. Go to appearance, set that to be cubic, and that smooths out the image in general. And then in slope, right click on that, go to symbology. And then here you can see we can begin to classify the intervals. So what you can do here basically is if you have manual interval chosen here, you can basically set the upper values of the breaks. So this first option right here, it's basically from 0 to 3%. So let's say we want to set it to be 0 to 2%, right? So set that to 2. And then the next one we can say is from, say, 2 to 5%. So we set that to 5. And then we have 10, so it's 5 to 10%, which is fine. We'll do 10 to 20%, so I'll put in 20 right there. And then we'll do 20 to 30. And then let's then everything else we'll just remove because we don't need them. So just click on the next one. Just click remove, remove. Just remove it. Remove it until we only have the ranges that we need. So it should look something like that. And then what you want to do is you want to go through these colors here and set the colors to be some kind of gradient. So you can either just go into this, again, this ramp here and set the color to one of these ramps. So let's see if we can find one. Let's say like this one right here. And so this is so that kind of shows what that looks like. Basically, you know, what you kind of want is you want to make the areas that are inaccessible kind of feel like areas that were worth looking at. So this one doesn't quite achieve that. Let's see what this looks like. This would be better if it was flipped. So what you could do is reverse ordering. Yeah, so that did that. Where basically anything that's blue is areas that are 2% or lower, 5% or lower. But once it goes to the yellow, the orange, and the red, that's those areas that begin to exceed 10% slope. So those are a little bit too steep to be called accessible. Looking at the colors here, you can adjust the colors to your heart's content. Maybe the yellow here is a bit too washed out. So what you can do is if you want to just custom adjust a color, just click on the symbol there, and then just choose one of these color ramp options, or you can just click on that and choose, say for instance, another color like so, and find an aesthetic that you like. Again, this is just graphics at this point, but then that's basically the slope map. And so I mean, bottom line, it was a pretty easy map to make, pretty easy way to analyze slope, and overlaying that with the other information, it gives you a very clear picture of of steepness and accessibility on a site. So this is a very nice, you can see for instance right here, these are the areas that are the most steep, and it makes sense when you actually observe that in conjunction with the contour lines. Okay, so this is now a map that we'll export out. So go to layout with the this map here, and what we're going to also want to do now is insert a legend. So go to the Insert tab, choose Legend, and then you can just click and drag on the side, and it should create a little legend. Actually, don't worry about the legend, this one here. I tried adding it and it froze the program. So we'll worry about that later. But basically, once you have this slope raster set up, just go to, again, Share, Export Layout, save it as a PNG, have all these other boxes checked. And we'll just save it on my desktop. I'll call it on site slope. Then hit export. So then that's exported. So now basically we have all the layers that we need to create our base maps. So what I do at this point is I open Photoshop, and we'll do a little bit of fine tuning to these maps to create the effect that we're going for. So I open Photoshop. And then we open the files that we just exported out. So the DEM, the hillshade, and the slope. So let's open the DEM first. So click on Site DEM, open that. And so you'll see basically it brought in the map. It looks like, yeah, it looks like it clipped it to the, yeah, so because I set the setting to be clip to graphics extent, so it does that. That's fine. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to clip out some of these other objects and then overlay this in Illustrator just in a second. But what I'm going to do next is I'm going to use the place embedded option here, and then we're going to place the hillshade on top of that. Check that box. We're going to place embedded and do the slope. So then we have all three of these layers just kind of sitting on top of each other. Then I'm going to do this little trick where basically I use the cropping tool. I'm going to crop out most of that legend and north arrow like so. Check the box. And then to finish cropping it to precisely the leftover pixels, just go to File, Image, Trim, Transparent Pixels, and then that clips it to the remaining pixels, but everything is still lined up. So first we're going to take care of the hillshade. So basically we click on the hillshade, choose something like multiply or darken or something like this, and what it does is it kind of adds a little bit of depth to the hillshade or to the color ramp here. You might want to go to curves and adjust, say for instance, the contrast of the image just a little bit. But what you're going for is something. This isn't as effective as I thought it would be, but we're kind of going for is basically the gradient plus a little bit of shade to it, and that helps give us that three-dimensional effect. Maybe also, I mean, I'm looking at this right now, and it looks like the color is a little bit not perfectly grayscale, so I might just choose a black and white filter just to really force it to be black and white. So something like that is kind of what I'm thinking we go for. Then once you have that, just go to File, Export, Export As, and then export it as a JPEG or a PNG. JPEGs are a little bit smaller. Choose JPEG, and then click Export. Then we're going to call this one Site DEM with Hillshade. And then do something similar, but with this slope map now. So maybe take this slope map and play around with it. You know, let's see what it looks like with a little bit of like an overlay, or you know, one of these multiply filter overlay. I mean, this overlay looks kind of cool. It kind of like helps. It kind of shows the effect of the terrain, but with the slope as well. So just mess around and see if there's some look. I mean, this is probably the best one, is just to have the very simple slope like on its own, with maybe a little bit of that Hillshade on top of that, just to give a little bit of depth to it. So again, play around with it. I'm okay with this. Maybe I'll add a curves layer and you know, brighten just a little bit. So once that you're happy with that look, to just go to export, export as JPEG, export, then choose sites slope with Hillshade. Save. So then back in the Illustrator file now, what we can do is we can bring in those layers. So I'm going to lock this layer here because I don't want to accidentally edit it. I'm going to create a new layer in here, and then we're going to bring in those exported out images. So let's start with the DEM with Hillshade. So I'm just going to click on that in my desktop and just pull it in to the Illustrator file. And it's gonna want it to bring it to probably layer 1, so that's fine. Just bring it in there, and then drag it up to the appropriate layer. And then you're gonna need to manually scale it. Bring it below the oh, there might be a little bit of transparency issues. Before you do that, go back to this layer here. Click on somewhere in the margin. Somewhere in there, there's a white box. So just click on the margin and then hit delete, and that should get rid of that. And now, if we turn on that, yeah, now it should show up. So then lock it again. If you hit Control Y on your keyboard, that brings everything into like this simple mode where you can actually see the clipping masks. This image actually just needs to line up to a clipping mask. So just basically just, you know, line it up to the clipping mask in one corner, and then hold Shift and scale it to the other corner of the clipping mask like that. Then hit Control Y on your keyboard again, and that fixes that. And then maybe click on this image here, and then reduce the opacity by a little bit, just so that you can still see it, the mix. But you know, that's kind of what we're going for, is something like this where you can see the contour lines, you can see a Hillshade image behind it, and that's a very simple way of representing the contours. And then we'll give this name, we'll call this one DEM, and then make a copy of that. Call this one slope, and then click on the image here, and then in the linked file thing up here, just click on that, click relink, then now choose slope with Hillshade. So now you've added in the slope file. So now you have the DEM base right here, and you have the slope base right here. So those are two base diagrams that we can use. And also I forgot about the aerial, so let's bring that in as well. We want to do is Yeah, what we should have done is we should have brought in the aerial into this whole layer system here as well, so that we export all of them at the same extents. But it doesn't really matter. I mean, as long as you know how the image fits in here. So, but what I'll just do is I'll go in here. Well, actually, no, it's just right here. It's already in there. It's fine. So we have slope. We have DEM. And then what we do is we save this Illustrator file. So what we do is we just leave everything as is, then hit save. And then the last step is to compose all of this in an InDesign file. So we go to File, open InDesign. And then we're going to create a new file. Choose print. Choose tabloid. Make sure your units are set to inches, so you have the 11 by 17. Make sure that the orientation is set to landscape. Uncheck facing pages, and then a number of pages, set that to be 3, and then create. So now we have 3 pages. So let's add in the first map. So what you do is you basically hit Control D on your keyboard and then find the first map, which is layout aerial. Just plop that in. So that's map number 1. The next one here, hit Control D, then choose the Illustrator file. That's called layout contours. But remember that this this map here actually has also the image behind it. So I'm going to show you a quick fun little trick. What you can do is you can click on it, right click on it, and choose this thing called Object Layer Options. And you actually can turn on layers in Illustrator. So turn on DEM, okay. So that's a DEM option, Control. Then copy this and paste it in place here. Right click on this, Object Layer Options, then turn off DEM, then turn on Slope. So now we have 3 maps, like so. And then what I recommend doing is adding a title to each one. So let's just go down here, create a little text box, choose a font, and so maybe like Roboto, I like that font, and then call this one site. Maybe actually give it a name, like maybe call this one parking lot site ortho image, and then just kind of like position it in a spot that looks good. Then copy and paste that, then right click, paste in place. Then we'll call this one parking lot site existing contours. Copy and paste that, paste in place, parking lot site slopes. And we're going to need to create a legend to describe what, say for instance, orange means, blue means, et cetera, et cetera. So an easy way we can do that is to just create a simple legend. So let's just create a few rectangles first. So I'll do rectangle 1, and I'll copy that a few times. Like so. If you create a few shapes like this, you can space them evenly using the spacing tools on the side here. And then what you want to do is you want to click on one. Let's say you want to create the blue, so click on the fill right here, and then choose this sampling tool, then just like pick the first color, then choose the next square, double click on the fill, choose this little eyedropper, pick the next color, and just continue to go through that process. And this is a really simple, easy, quick way of creating a legend based off of the colors of the diagram that you made. And then just bring that into the map right here. Since the margin is pretty tight, we might need to do something like this where it's like that, and then simply just do 0 to 2%, 2% to 5%, 5% to 10%, 10 to 20, then 30% or higher. And then what we'll do now is basically save. So click File, Save As, save on desktop. We'll call this one Contour Parking Lot Site. And then hit Export. So export as a PDF print. So hit Save. Then in export settings, just make sure it's set to high quality print, then just hit Export. And then it's thinking about it. And then once it's done, on your desktop, you should see, a new export from that whole work. So if you double click on that now and open that PDF, here it is. So you have, your aerial, contours, slope. And that's kind of what we're going for, is this very simple series of plans that you can use as your grading base. So you have aerial, contour, and plan, and analysis. So that's basically, all the work that you need to do to work on the first 3 deliverables of this assignment. I would encourage everyone to, take a little bit more time with the graphics and, find a style that works for you. But the last one we're going to do is after you've done all this work, is basically we're going to start grading a little intervention on this Auburn campus. So that's it. And any questions, let's talk about this in class. But I encourage everyone to just test out and use these tools and try to learn a little bit of GIS, which is a very useful technique. I apologize a little bit. I think this tutorial is maybe a little bit weird to listen to, just because I'm kind of recording this tutorial while I'm on the fieldwork trip in between site visits and that kind of thing, and so I'm pretty tired. But I just wanted to make sure that you guys had this tutorial sometime this weekend, just so that I wasn't leaving you hanging and you can actually get going. But again, any questions, feel free to reach out, or just wait until we have next class and we can take a look at that. So thank you all, and have fun.